not the same. It's craft somehow, and that doesn't have the same value. Of course, there are all sorts of Indigenous artists, but how does this connect to your work? The next would be to talk about issues like gender and how that connects to your work. And then largely to talk about commitments, the bigger commitments that you have, the kinds of things that you feel you're doing on behalf of your community. And then to talk about connections. But we'll just go through those and see how far we get and listen to your questions as well. And anything you'd like to add is totally up to you. So the first question is to talk about struggles and issues. What do you think are the biggest sort of struggles and issues your communities are facing that you're working with in your collective work? Do you want to?
I'll start. We got together in 2012. We've been making work collectively since 2012, and a kind of big reason why we got together was building a sense of safety in numbers as young Indigenous women in Western art institutions. We didn't feel comfortable to express ourselves or even just exist in those spaces. So getting together, we found a huge strength in that. A lot of our work is based around the erasure of Māori women, our narratives, our just visibility in general. We like to research narratives based in Māori women narratives and create works that are big and huge and you can't ignore them, and they take up a lot of space in the gallery to highlight our stories, because a lot of those are hard to see. So that's something that we're really passionate about fighting for. Yeah.
আমাদের হিল আর্টিস্ট গ্রুপ প্রতিষ্ঠা হয়েছিল 1997 সালে। আমাদের সিনিয়ররা যারা ছিলেন ঢাকা চারুকলার দ্বারা এটা প্রতিষ্ঠা করেছিলেন। শুরুতেই আমরা এই গ্রুপটা শুধুমাত্র বছরে একটা প্রদর্শনী করতো সবাইকে নিয়ে। সেটা মানে কোনো মানে সবাই যার যার ইচ্ছামতো কাজে দিত, ওখানে কোনো থিম বেসড বা কোনো কিছু ভাবনা নিয়ে করে নাই।
So his Hill Artists Group started in 1997, and initially they started just by making individually the works. It wasn't really against any particular movement or any issues. It was just them themselves creating a space to make their own work.
আমি ব্যক্তিগতভাবে আমি যখন এখানে আসি, আমার ব্যক্তিগত কাজগুলো বেশিরভাগ হচ্ছে আমার জীবনের সাথে ঘটে যাওয়া ওইসব বিষয় নিয়ে আমি পারফরমেন্স এবং আর্টওয়ার্ক করি।
So his personal work has been related to his personal struggles and related to his life work, and he's worked across performance and other mediums. Performance and drawing.
তো আমাদের এখানে যেটা আমি পরে গ্রুপে জয়েন করার পরে বুঝতেছি, এটা হচ্ছে আমরা সবাই অনেকে ভয় পাই, মানে যদি কোনো কিছু যেটা বলতে চাই আমরা সেটা আমরা স্পষ্টভাবে বলতে সাহস পাই না, ভয় পাই। এ কারণে হচ্ছে আমরা এখন আমি ভাবতেছি মানে কীভাবে সেটাকে অন্যভাবে প্রকাশ করা যায় সেই বিষয় নিয়ে।
So as a collective, they're actually all very scared to say a lot of things, and I imagine against the government and other things. But and right now they're beginning to think how they can express some of those thoughts or feelings in other ways rather than directly.
যেমন আমরা নিজেদেরকে যে পরিচয় দিতে চাই, মানে সেই পরিচয় আমরা দিতে পারি না। মানে আমাদেরকে সরকার একটা আমরা যেটা পছন্দ করি না সেরকমও এক ধরনের পরিচয় দিতে একেবারে অফিসিয়ালি রাষ্ট্রীয়ভাবে আমাদেরকে ঘোষণা করা হয়। তো সেই সেই কথার বিরুদ্ধে যখন কোনো কিছু বলতে বলতে যাব আমরা তখন একটু আমরা সবসময় ভীত থাকি।
So one of the things has been about identity, and they can't self-identify as who they are due to government policies. So this is one of the things they're actually thinking a lot about. How can they identify themselves with and as
আমরা তো নিজেকে আদিবাসী বলে মনে করি, কিন্তু সরকার বলতেছে এখানে কোনো আদিবাসী নেই।
So the main challenge in this country has always been that the government does not recognize an existence of indigenous communities other than the Bengalis. So they do not exist on paper in any form other than as a Bengali. So they're not accounted for as indigenous groups.
তো আমি পরে আমরা চিন্তা করলাম যে না, আমরা যদি আরো অনেক কথা বলতে চাই তাহলে হচ্ছে আমাদের এই চারুকলা এবং সাংস্কৃতিক অঙ্গনে আরো অনেক কিছু করতে হবে। সে কারণে হচ্ছে আমরা গত বছর একেবারে যেখানে কখনোই আর্ট সম্পর্কে কোনো কিছু জানতো না, মানে আমাদের যে প্রাথমিক স্কুল পাহাড়ের, সেখানে একটা আমরা আর্ট ক্যাম্প করছিলাম।
So last year they decided to start educating their own communities by taking back lessons they've learned and the practices they've been doing in the fine art school into their local community and teaching some of the school kids there.
তা আমি মনে করি হচ্ছে যদি আমরা একেবারে স্কুল পর্যায় থেকে কিছু কিছু ধারণা দিয়ে আসতে পারি আমাদের মানুষজনকে, আর্ট কি, কিভাবে এটা কথা বলতে পারে, কিভাবে অনেক কিছু সরাসরি না বলেও কিভাবে আমরা ওই বক্তব্যটা ফুটিয়ে তুলতে পারি, সে কারণে হচ্ছে আমরা এখন চেষ্টা করতেছি আরও আর্ট নিয়ে পড়াশোনা করতে আগ্রহী হোক আমাদের মানুষেরা।
স্কুলের বাচ্চারা কত বছর? স্কুলের বাচ্চারা কত বছর? So okay, so they as a collective are now really thinking how to take art as an education tool and as a tool of power and changing sort of mindsets in their communities. So they're going back to primary schools in the hill communities and teaching art and trying to teach how art can be used as a tool to have sort of political challenges, basically.
Thank you. Yeah, there's some similarities, I think. So in Bougainville, the biggest struggle, I guess, is the most recent political struggle. Just last year, people in Bougainville were able to vote if they want to be independent from Papua New Guinea. So that vote went through 97.7% in pro-independence to break away. And that's a struggle that's been going on since colonization, since like World War II, and Papua New Guinea got their independence in 1975 from Australia. And so Bougainvillians are like many generations have passed for the struggle to be our own identified people. So in a similar way, I think the art and identity is even more so important to our communities. And the problem, the word with tradition, yeah. So it's like we would say tambuna, you know, the ancestors. Tradition is an English word. It's problematic. It puts the people in the past, whereas we're obviously very present as Indigenous people. So the work that I brought with my community is made from natural materials. The wapu, which is the betel nut palm, which it can be sourced here, and the patabili, which is the cane. And so this idea of craft work, the work upstairs is mainly the arch roof with panels, which is like individual storyboards that individual people, 10 people in my village, made together collectively. So there's these ideas of how, as an individual artist, with your identity, can you come together to make, it's the process to build an actual shelter and a covering for other Indigenous people like Aho Collective from Aotearoa to come and sing, and for people today at 4 p.m. to come and work the ceremony under. So these are all really interesting elements, I think, to the work, and they're the elements that are brought here today.
I think it's a really important theme that you're bringing up, and a couple of you have talked about, the connections and the solidarities and the synchronicities between, like, a trans-Indigenous kind of awareness as well. You were talking the other day, Taloi, about how your place that you've created, that center, has become a center of gravity within that exhibit, where people are actually coming and, the Aho Collective is using that as a space to share their song, their chant, and creating a sort of a safe space. What are some of those other things that you've touched on tradition now? What are some of those other kinds of processes or traditions and kind of problematizing of that word tradition that you might want to bring up? Some other thoughts? Does that resonate with you?
I think in a similar way to what Taloi was saying, we don't really use the word tradition either. It's if we did have to kind of place it within a context, we might use the word customary, but our practices are part of a continuum, and they're contemporary and they're current, and they may have long histories, but they also have a really incredible future ahead of us. And so with this work that we get to do within Taloi's space, it's taking this concept of this pātere and being able to bring it into this space, because as Indigenous women we often speak and then usually sing a song of some sort of speaking, and we've been having to do that more and more lately, and we want to do it with confidence and integrity. So we've asked this composer to so we can have a song for us across our different iwi groups, but so it's about continuing those practices within the context that we're living today, whether that's back home on our own marae, on our own grounded spaces, in the places and communities where we live, or in an international art context that is far from home, but we can bring those practices and still stand in I guess a strong way, and be able to still practice them. Yeah.
ঐতিহ্য বলতে আমরা যেটা আমি মনে করি সেটা হচ্ছে আমাদের পূর্বপুরুষদের রেখে যাওয়া যেসব রীতিনীতি বলতে পারি আমরা, পোশাক পরিচ্ছদ, সেগুলো বলতে পারি। তো হ্যাঁ, তো এর মধ্যে হচ্ছে বিশেষ করে আমাদের যত দিন চলে আসতেছে আমাদের কিন্তু অনেক কিছুই পরিবর্তন হয়ে যাচ্ছে। তো সেই পরিবর্তনের দিক দিয়ে কিন্তু আমাদের আদিবাসী মেয়েরা সবসময় নিজেদেরকে ধরে রাখে, মানে আমার কাছে মনে হয় তাদের বিশেষ করে পোশাকে, তাদের পোশাকের মধ্যে আমরা সবসময় বেশিরভাগ ধরে নিতে পারি, সেটা হচ্ছে মনে হয়। হ্যাঁ।
So he's basically saying they're losing a lot of their traditions, but one of the ways they are maintaining tradition is the way the women are dressing in the communities. So that's a big part of their solidarity, I think, is through dress and dressmaking and weaving, I think. Yeah. So they weave and they dress. That's one of their biggest ways of keeping some form of their identity in terms of their traditions.
বিশেষ করে আমাদের তো ওখানে 11টা জাতি আছে, তো বিশেষ করে আমরা বেশিরভাগ মানে মেয়েদের পোশাক দেখেই আইডেন্টিফাই করে যে এটা কোন কমিউনিটির, কোন আদিবাসীর।
So, just as she was translating as well, but there's lots of ritual and puja festivals, and within the 11 indigenous communities that are there, they can identify through the dress. So it's a big part of their identity as well. Yeah.
Okay. I guess I want to hear you elaborate a bit more about your process in terms of how you work together with your communities. Because obviously, within your collectives, there's collaboration, but it's also you're collaborating with a larger community and helping to transmit their voices. So what is your research process or your collaboration process, or how might you get consent? Or, I mean, you spoke about the chant and trying to do it in a way that was respectful and had integrity to it. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your larger process within the community beyond the work that you have here at the Dhaka Arts Summit.
The kind of continuation of knowledge and communication of knowledge. We really rely and trust kind of the intergenerational relationships. We have a mentor, Dr. Maureen Lander, who is a Māori installation artist. She kind of founded her practice in the 1980s. We rely really heavily on her as a mentor. Sometimes that exists as we email her sporadically throughout the year and have kind of back and forth, and then even more in depth we go and visit her and spend big chunks of time listening and learning. She holds a lot of amazing customary knowledge, but also is just a great spatial brain, kind of in a design and art sense. So intergenerational knowledge is really important to us, which we then also extend in a kind of teaching practice with younger emerging artists that are coming up, and sharing any platforms that we get. We like to, if possible, bring young Māori artists with us. We were in Canada in November at the National Gallery there as a part of a big global Indigenous contemporary art show, and we were able to bring 2 young women with us who are studying in the Māori Visual Arts program at Massey University in Palmerston North in New Zealand, and they just came and saw what a kind of global level Indigenous art, artists at the top of their game, what that can look like. Our access and activity in community looks like lots of different things, and those are the things that we've figured out so far.
I just want to add about the process question as well. So the 4 of us, Mataho is just the 4 of us, but we have those intergenerational connections. But our process is founded in the idea of wānanga. Wānanga is loosely translated in Māori as a house of learning. It's a process and a ritual that has been happening for many years, and it's not a physical house, but it's a space in which people come together over an intense period of time, eat, sleep in the same room, and talk, and that's how we make our work. We live in different parts of New Zealand, some a 7-hour drive, and we have to take time to come together, and it's a practice that our people have been doing since the beginning of time. That process of wānanga, and really just fleshing out ideas as a group, as opposed to on your own or presenting something. And also the way in which we physically make work and the process of not being able to tell whose hand has done what, and looking at it as a group and not, say, a leader and people following. Yeah.
I can relate to what everyone's saying because I guess the way knowledge is passed on and what I've learnt in the last couple of years in my community is that one of the, and I was talking with people here as well in the construction of the work here all week, is it's about temporality actually, and the materials are natural, they won't last. So the cane, the esma, the vine, the platform, the structure, that doesn't mean anything actually itself. It will all go eventually. It's what happens in the space and what it brings people. And through a lot of customary practices that I have been through in the last couple of years, biggest lessons that I've learned is that the way to remember things is to actually break them, or when something's broken, when you break something, and then there's a reason to make it again, you have to go through that process of learning. So that's the ritual of going to the forest, finding where the cane is, uprooting it, cutting it, harvesting it, bringing back, realizing it takes time. There's water in there, it needs to drain. If you split the cane too early and tie it, it won't work in this weather conditions. So it takes time and it takes other people. You can't do this on your own. So yeah, I found that rituals of breaking and remaking is a way of just inheriting that knowledge, and it's not what lasts actually. It's the relationships that have formed and kept on going. And if we were to make things that to last, I think I heard a story here with the local architect, and he said that the introduction of acrylic paints has really ruined their clay surface painting in their architecture in their housing, because when the acrylic comes to town and they paint it, that process of going and remaking the mud earth walls have gone now. It's replaced it. So there's something quite nice about that continuum. Yeah.
আমাদের গ্রুপ আমি যেমন শুরুতেই বলছিলাম আসলে আমরা শুধুমাত্র বছরে একটা প্রদর্শনী করব সদস্যরা মিলে, সেই উদ্দেশ্যেই হচ্ছে এটা করা হয়েছিল। আমাদের আসলে সমসাময়িক যে শিল্পচর্চা মানে সেই সম্পর্কে আমাদের এত আমরা জানি না, তো কমিউনিটির সাথেও কিভাবে কাজ করতে পারি আমরা সেই সম্পর্কেও আমরা তেমন আমাদের কোনো আইডিয়া নাই। ফলে হচ্ছে আমরা এখন বিভিন্ন কিছু দেখার পরে আস্তে আস্তে শুধুমাত্র বছরে একটা প্রদর্শনী না করে কিভাবে আরও আমাদের মানুষের সাথে কাজ করা যায় সেই বিষয় নিয়ে আমাদের ভাবনা আছে। যেমন আমরা এই গত বছরই প্রথমবার আমরা আমাদের তিনটা পার্বত্য জেলাতে আর্ট ক্যাম্প করেছি, একদম যেখানে গ্রামের মানুষরা থাকে তাদের সাথে আর্ট ক্যাম্প করছি। তো ভবিষ্যতে হয়তো আমরা আবার আরও অনেক কিছু চেষ্টা করব কিভাবে এই বিষয় নিয়ে কাজ করা যায়।
Sorry. So he's saying they have yet to really start learning how to work with outside of the arts community, so they're beginning to really look and see and begin to think about how they can actually go back and work with their community. So that's one of the lessons they're beginning to take, I think, from some of these events. And usually they do one festival a year, like an arts exhibition a year, but they're beginning to think beyond that now, and they're beginning to think how they can be more involved in their communities. Sorry, I got distracted. Sorry. আবার বলেন একটু আমাকে।
যেমন আমাদের হিল আর্টিস্ট গ্রুপের কিন্তু নির্দিষ্ট কোনো অফিসও নেই, কোনো জায়গায় মানে একটা আমরা যে মিট করব, কথা বলবো, আলোচনা করব সেরকম নাই। আমরা তো 3টা পার্বত্য জেলা এবং ঢাকা, চট্টগ্রাম সব কিছু মিলে এলোমেলোভাবে ছড়াই ছিটাই আছি। তো এ কারণেও হয়তো আমাদের যে কোনো কিছু ভেবে একত্রে কাজ করব মানে সেটাও একটু কষ্ট হচ্ছে আমার কাছে মনে হচ্ছে আর কি।
So I think there's a lot of struggles within their collective because of the challenges they have faced in creating work in the first place, and I think they're really trying to think about these issues more. But I think there's genuine concerns that they need to address within just being, yeah.
All right, we actually don't have too much more time. I think we're only here until 3, right? Yeah, so what I might do is just ask one more simple question, which is, I mean, one of the main objectives of this talk is just to really think about the solidarities or the connections between your different groups. And you've spoken a little bit to this sort of trans-indigeneity, or you've spoken about the, you know, working and being in an exhibition in Canada, for example, with First Nations people. How do you see this kind of larger collectivity, maybe, of connecting to larger other collectives, or connecting between, you know, other communities and addressing, you know, these histories of violence and gender inequality and any of those other kinds of things you'd like to speak to? Healing, for example. I mean, there's so many different issues. For example, where I work in the Marshall Islands, one of the biggest issues is climate change. What are some of the emerging solidarities that you see, or different things that are emerging for you in your communities, in your practice, and maybe how you see things going in the future? It's a very open question, but, you know.
Just quickly, personally, collectivity has been a healing space. Just I see collective practice again and again as a kind of innately Indigenous practice, but also just people relating to each other and working together is so powerful. And we have seen that over the last few days here, and it's so validating to see other collectives working so hard and so powerfully. And yeah, we just to have that relationship, we relate to each other so easily. That's been really special so far.
I think too, the nice thing about reaching across different collectives is that you you share narratives and the stories that have been carried through different generations, and art facilitates a space for that, and to look at them investigate those narratives from different perspectives. So for us, that's partly about looking at, as one of us mentioned earlier, how customary stories, creation narratives have been refiltered through a colonial lens, and you know the women that were the protagonists of those stories are kind of now the helpers to help often the male protagonist to further the story. So it's interesting to look to other Indigenous cultures that have colonial histories and see similarities in how those narratives have been retold, and how younger artists are beginning to retell them and reframe them.
আমি প্রথমে আমরা এবারে যে কাজটা করছি সে সম্পর্কে একটু করে বলতে চাই। এখানে হচ্ছে আমরা 11টি আদিবাসীদের কাপড়ের বুননের যে নকশা আছে ওরকম ছোট্ট একটা প্রত্যেকটা জাতির একটা করে নকশা নিয়ে 11টা কলাম করে ওই দেওয়ালটাকে ফিল আপ করছি। এর মধ্যে মাঝখানে একটা আমরা জুম ঘর দিয়েছি, যেটাকে হচ্ছে অস্থায়ী একটা ঘর। আসলে জুম ঘরটা হচ্ছে যেখানে প্রত্যেক আমাদের আদিবাসীরা জুম চাষ করে পাহাড়ে, ওই সময় ফসল তোলার জন্য একটা ঘর তৈরি করে, মানে অস্থায়ীভাবে। তো আমাদের কাপড়ের ভিন্নতা থাকতে পারে, ড্রেসের ভিন্নতা, অনেক কিছু পূজা পার্বণের ভিন্নতা থাকতে পারে, কিন্তু ওই ঘরটা হচ্ছে প্রত্যেক জাতিই করে। মানে এ কারণে সেটা আমরা মনে করছি এটা একটা ঐক্যের প্রতীক হিসেবে ওই কাজটা করছি।
So he quickly wants to explain the work that they've installed upstairs. So they have presented a set of motifs of the 11 indigenous groups. So there are 11 different motifs. And they've also installed a jumgor, which is... Hey, so it's a temporary shed they've also installed. So what he's saying is basically they all have different motifs and different rituals and different pujas within in the different communities, but actually they all use the same jumgor in terms of during harvesting. So they thought that they would show that. So I guess they're showing their difference and also what makes them come together in terms of their harvesting.
আর গ্রুপের যে সমস্যার কথা বলতে হয় প্রথমে আমরা চাই হচ্ছে অন্যান্য অনেক আমাদের মতো গ্রুপের সাথে যোগাযোগ করতে। তো সেক্ষেত্রে আমার কাছে মনে হচ্ছে আমাদের ভাষাগত একটা সমস্যা, বিশেষ করে সেই জন্য হচ্ছে হয়তো আমরা ভবিষ্যতে আমাদের গ্রুপে এমন কাউকে রাখবো যারা হচ্ছে ইংরেজিও ভালো বলতে পারে। কারণ আমরা যখন ছোট থেকেই আমার মনে আছে, আমার কিন্তু মাতৃভাষা ককবরক, কিন্তু আমরা তখন আমাদের যে বইপত্র পড়তে হয় সেটা ছিল বাংলা, ফলে আমরা কিছুই বুঝতাম না। তো আমাদের মধ্যে আবার 11টা কমিউনিটির জাতির সবগুলোর ভাষা আলাদা, এখন সেগুলো শিখছি, এরপরে আর ইংরেজি শিখতে ইচ্ছা হয় নাই আমাদের। এ কারণে এখন কিন্তু ভাবতেছি যে যোগাযোগটা বাড়াইতে হলে আমাদের অবশ্যই একজন গ্রুপের মধ্যে এরকম একজন পার্সন দরকার যে হচ্ছে যোগাযোগ করতে পারে। এর মধ্যে যেটা সত্যি কথা সেটাই বলি, সেটা হচ্ছে সামদানি থেকে বিভিন্ন কেস থেকে অনেকগুলো মেল পাঠাচ্ছে আমাকে, অনেক বড় বড় মেল, কিন্তু আমি ওইটা পরে দেখি নাই, আমার ওইটা মানে বুঝতে পারি নাই, আমি জাস্ট ওভাবে ফেলে রেখে দিচ্ছি। তো আমার কাছে মনে হয় সেটা আমাদের খুব জরুরি এখন সবার সাথে যদি যোগাযোগ রাখতে চাই, এখানে যারা আছেন আমাদের মতো আর অনেক গ্রুপ আছেন, তাদের সাথে যোগাযোগ রাখতে চাইলে আমাদের এটা করতে হবে, সেটা হচ্ছে আমরা প্রথম পদক্ষেপ নিব বল।
So I'll try and summarize. So from a young age, he had to learn Bangla separately to his own indigenous language, the Kokborok language, and alongside that, he also had to learn other 11 indigenous languages so that they can communicate amongst each other. So therefore, having learned Bangla and all these other languages, he's decided actually he doesn't need to learn English or want to learn English. But having said that, the challenges that his group faces is about communication because of that. So whilst here they want to engage and mix with other collectives and other communities, but actually what they've learned is that actually because they don't have English, anyone in their community who has English as a strength in their collective, they are not being able to actually communicate. Alongside that, he was saying like lots of people write to them and lots of long emails, but obviously no one's reading them, so what's the point?
I don't read my emails either. I don't have much to say to that. It's pretty much said it all. I think like solidarity is like keep diversity, like keep doing motifs, speaking a language, singing your songs. I think the more we do that, I think that's what artists do.
Okay, I think it's probably a good time to open this up to the rest of you and hear your voices as well. Who has any questions or comments? And I think we were hoping that this could be even more of a circle where we just kept talking to each other. I don't really like, being the TV host thing. Like, I think it's best if you're actually able to ask each other questions as well, or comment to each other a bit more openly. So, yeah.
Okay, I'll just stand. Towards the beginning, somebody, I forget who, had mentioned something about installation and taking up space within the white cube. And I was wondering whether anybody had any thoughts about medium and a kind of reparative justice or scale in reparative justice?
We quite often work with materials that we call modern Māori materials, and those are usually pretty industrial, really accessible, really cheap. They are things in our communities that we see people using every day. So, for example, just tarpaulin, that's used to cover firewood, make shelters, make houses, make. There's a method that people have started using it to catch steam and cook food. It's something that if any members of our family can come into that white cube and they don't recognise anything else, they can see that material, they know what it feels like, that is an in. If nothing else, the material is familiar. That's something we're really passionate about representing in that cube. That's one way we kind of get in there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, whoever wants to respond, feel free. Other questions or thoughts? Yeah.
Hi, Joy Dabda. I've seen a lot of. I'm going to say it in English, then he's going to translate you in Bangla. Basically, I'm a big fan of his work. He does lots of live, surreal presentation, but everything with nature, like whatever he gets around him, he'll tracks. So I just want to know what inspires him to work with the nature around him, because they're going through so much struggles, but he's continuously producing amazing artwork. You need to explain that too. আচ্ছা আমি বলি দাদা আমি আপনার কাজ দেখি সব সময় আমি ফেসবুক ফলোয়ার আমার খুব ভালো লাগে আপনার যে নেচার নিয়ে যে কাজগুলো করেন ওই যে পাহাড়ে মাটি দিয়ে পানি দিয়ে গাছ দিয়ে সো আমার কোশ্চেন আমার জিজ্ঞেস করতে চাচ্ছি যে আপনার কি 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 ইন্সপায়ার করে টু এইসব দিয়ে কাজ করার কারণ আমি একটা দেখছিলাম আপনি জঙ্গলের ভিতরে একদম ব্লেন্ড হয়ে গেছিলেন গাছপালা দিয়ে কভার করে আপনার সেলফকে ও সো ওইটার ইন্সপিরেশনটা কি যে আপনি এই ন্যাচারাল ম্যাটেরিয়াল দিয়ে কাজ করেন
ধন্যবাদ ধন্যবাদ আসলে আমার ছোটবেলায় আমি কখনো ফুটবল খেলতে পাই নাই আমি ক্রিকেট খেলতে পাই নাই মানে ওই সময় হচ্ছে আমরা যুদ্ধ খেলা খেলতাম মানে এক পার্টি হয়তো আর্মি আর এক পার্টি হচ্ছে আমরা শান্তি বাহিনী তো ওইগুলো হচ্ছে আমাদের খেলা ছিল তো তখন সব সময় ওই যখন শান্তি বাহিনী হয় তখন তো জঙ্গলে লুকায় থাকতে হয় ওই লুকায় থাকতে আমার জঙ্গলকে খুব ভালো লাগে তারপরে হচ্ছে যদি কখনো কোনো কিছুর জন্য দুঃখ পাই কষ্ট পাই আমি ঝিরিতে চলে যাই ঝিরিতে গিয়ে মাছ ধরি তারপরে হচ্ছে ওগুলো রান্না করে খাই তখন আমার খুব শান্তি লাগে তো এইসব বিষয়গুলো যখন আমি চারুকলায় আসছি মানে আমার খুব কষ্ট হইতো মানে শহরে থাকতে মানে আমার শুধু মানে একটু বন্ধ পাইলে চলে যেতে ইচ্ছা করতো মাঝে মাঝে পরীক্ষা না দিয়ে চলে যেতাম আমি মানে যেই দিন ভালো লাগে না তো ওখানে গেলে যে ভালো লাগে সেই ভালো লাগাগুলোকেই হচ্ছে আমি আমার কাজের মধ্যে আনতে চেষ্টা করি পারফরমেন্সের মধ্যে
Okay, so he's saying as a young boy he didn't play football or cricket, but actually they played a game where they were the guerrilla and they were playing against the military. So there were basically lots of fighting. As kids they were playing a game of fighting against the military. They would dress up and play different roles. And he quite enjoyed the camouflage element of the military, and that was something that he did a lot when he was growing up playing that game. And the other thing he said is when he went to university to study fine arts, he really disliked the urban city, and so another thing he mentioned actually is that he also loved fishing in the ponds and the lakes that were nearby. And so he basically was saying like he really wanted to escape the city and nature was where he wanted to go back to. So that was his main inspiration. So nature and home is where he felt much more true to himself, and that's his inspiration to his work.
I'm just curious, there's a lot of talk around decolonizing the institution or art world or whatever you want to call it. How do you feel about that, or do you have suggestions on how that can actually be actualized?
Yeah, so who'd like to take that? Decolonizing the institution, decolonizing the so-called art world. How's it going? Yeah, okay. How's that done?
Yeah, it's a real popular word at the moment, and I think part of what we try to do is not so much decolonize in terms of respond to a colonial construct, but for a lack of better word, like Māoriify. So just be ourselves and be, I guess, the best Māori version of ourselves within those spaces. And so it's not so much a response, it's just trying to live our fullest capacity of our Indigenous selves. Yeah.
He won't answer that question.
Yeah, I think there's creative ways to subvert the space. I think we've seen that a lot in some artist practices around the world. And that's a way, yeah, the word decolonizing for me is, I like to use the word self-determining in any kind of discussion around that. Yeah. So, yeah, I think as long as I agree with Bridget, if you can hold your space, and I think speaking with other artists from Oceania, often a white cube or this constrictive space is not anything new, so they actually use it as a form of resistance to put their work in there or around. Yeah, by having that conversation is better, I think, and to bring people, you never know, it's like what goes on behind and installing and making work, and who comes to see has a life beyond that, and the response from people, from audience, yeah, that's the discussion, the conversation, I think.
Excellent. Okay, so I think we have about time for one more question or comment or a thought someone would like to share.
Thank you for all of your selves that you brought to the space. Just quite a simple question, not quite sure how to phrase this, but all of the stuff that you bring and your Indigenous sort of politics, rituals, and the many words that you've brought to the space today, when you bring it into the high art world or the institution or whatever, you want to call it, do you often feel like it gets co-opted by that space? Because, again, things have been tokenized when they've become marginal or cool or even like sexy, you know what I mean? And have you felt constrained by that to perform a self that is, again, the best version of that very particular self that has tokenistic value and currency in the art world?
I think for us, we have been reserved and protective of the spaces where we go. And if it doesn't feel right, then we don't go. I think boundaries, upholding boundaries, has been something that has helped us. But we've seen other Indigenous art collectors be those performers, and yeah, I think that comes from us building a structure internally of what our vision is and where we would like to go and how we'd like to represent ourselves. But it's a tricky dance. It's really something that we have been aware of as soon as we started, and we saw how we were received. And so we've been together for 8 years. This is the first time we are getting our song together. It's kind of customary that when people speak in Māori culture that a song is sung afterwards as a kind of support. You speak, then your people get up and say, we totally agree with that. And from our first show, we didn't have speeches, so we could avoid that, absolutely. And our concepts and our process and our materials are our culture. We've just kind of figured out that more increasingly, so we want to bring that and share that in the right context. So it's taken us that long to get our heads around it. Yeah, it's really tricky.
ওইরকম আসলে আমরা তো কখনো বড় এক্সিবিশনেও যাই, মানে গ্যালারিগুলোতে যাই নাই, ওনারা আমাদেরকে চিনে না, আমরা ওনাদেরকে চিনি না। তো যদি আমরা ভবিষ্যতে অনেক ভালো কাজ করি, হয়তো আমাদেরকে যদি খুঁজে নেয় তখন হয়তো আমরা বুঝতে পারবো, আসলে এখন তো জানি না, সরি।
So he was just saying how they haven't yet really done any work in any big gallery where this challenge has been faced. So when they do exhibit in a big gallery, then they will probably address that issue.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for joining us today. This is obviously a very important and ongoing conversation that, you know, needs to be had like this, perhaps, just to keep talking. So I hope this conversation continues. And thank you for being here in such large numbers. We really appreciate it. And have a great time, you know, at the Dhaka Art Summit. I want to express our thanks also to the Dhaka Art Summit to making this space possible, so that these questions can even come up in the first place. I think they're very important. Yeah. Yes.
Just in terms of creating a safe space.
Yes.
Just in terms of creating a safe space and being aware that there was military presence when we were talking about the military, and it's actually not cool to do that here, actually. Yeah.